Hello and welcome to this video about Maybury's Two Laws. A book called The Spiritual Laws of Life by Harold Klemp contains over 50 laws, most of which you've probably never heard of. I know I hadn't until I began my study of Eckankar. I see such knowledge as essential for success in life, no matter how you perceive it, whether spiritual or material. I can't recommend this book and its study highly enough. You can get it at all Nine's bookstores or directly from Eckankar. This video is not sponsored by Eckankar, but you'll find links below for more information. Let's have a look at Maybury's two laws, described on page 181. Do all you have agreed to do, and do not encroach on other persons or their property. I think these two laws provide a solid foundation for a study of spiritual law. They also appear in Richard Maybury's remarkable book on the history of common law, Whatever Happened to Justice. Richard Maybury is a respected military historian and economist of the Austrian school. He has a stellar reputation predicting the future for many wealthy financial clients. One reason is he has his own skin in the game. He recommends what works for him. Another reason is his basic premise. You can trust and depend on people, companies, and nations that follow these two laws. He bets against the rest. I'm not here to promote his services, but to give some background. He came up with these two laws by studying all of the great religions and philosophies of the world. He learned that they all teach the same two laws, and he codified them into a single 17-word sentence. It's worth remembering word for word. Do all you have agreed to do, and do not encroach on other persons or their property. The first law, do all you have agreed to do, is the basis of all contract law. The second law, do not encroach on other persons or their property, is the basis of all tort law and some criminal law. What's a tort? A tort is a wrong that causes harm or loss to a person or his property. These two laws are also the basis of ethics. Any breach of ethics is a breach of one of these two laws. Unfortunately, ethics as taught by many institutions today tend to be little more than the latest fad in political ideology and have little if anything to do with these two laws. Maybury has pointed out that when religion was removed from our educational system, the teachings of morality and ethics were lost. As a result, whole generations of young people have grown up without knowing how to tell right from wrong, or learning any other form of critical thinking. Businesses need honest people to work for them as a matter of survival. Many of them are now requiring prospective employees to have proof of training in ethics in order to ensure honor and good morale in the workplace. In the frontier days of the Old West, men were bound by their word, otherwise they had a short life. Frontier towns were small and everyone knew everyone else, either personally or by reputation. Life was tough. Hostile tribes and criminal gangs terrorized the countryside. The luxury of police or military protection didn't come until much later. People had to work together to defend themselves. They had to know who they could trust. No one could afford to have their means of survival stolen or destroyed because it meant they would die. They refused to do business with anyone who proved untrustworthy or dishonorable. Such men became outcasts. They had to either leave the area or turn to crime. Leaving was a smart choice. Criminals in those days didn't have court trials. Their reputation was their judge and jury, and their death sentence. It may not seem so, but the same principle still holds true. Today's prisons are often overcrowded with people who unfortunately were never taught to keep their word or have respect for persons or their property. We give those we can't trust a wide margin. We don't give them a second chance. Who can afford to? We stick with those who have established a good reputation. We ourselves establish a solid reputation when we keep our word, even when it's difficult, and respect the space and property of others at all times. These two laws are the basis of developing skill and quality in our work. They help us work hard. we gain not only respect but also demand for whatever services we may offer. Ethics are the basis of all lasting success. Religion gave us three essential gifts. The first gift, a code of ethics, needs a motive. This is provided by the second gift, the doctrine of someone watching. If we believe God is watching us, we tend to be much more circumspect in our thoughts and actions. But let's dig a little deeper. Whether we're atheist, agnostic, religious, or just spiritual, there's no escaping the fact that there is indeed someone watching. Can you guess who it is? I'm sure you know. It's you. You're watching. You see everything you do. You are the judge of your own character, and there's no sterner judge. You decide whether you reside in heaven, or hell, or a purgatory of your own making. Most of us try to run from ourselves because we can't stand what we see. This condemns us to a living hell, from which there is no escape. We all have a mix of things we can be proud of, and other things that keep us awake at night. I have more than enough to make me cringe. However, I've made peace by doing 4 things. First, admitting my wrongs. Second, by making amends the best I can. Third, resolving never to do them again. And fourth, forgiving and accepting myself, warts and all. The all-seeing eye helps us learn to become ethical with ourselves. But this too requires a motive. What would make us want to face ourselves and take responsibility? In times past, it was the fear of the eternal fires of hell. It forced us to at least pretend to be good, but it was based on fear, and pretense is just hypocrisy. A fear-based religion is better than none for people who are primarily motivated by fear, because nothing else will keep them from terrorizing others. The real motivation for true goodness is divine love. This doctrine is the third gift of religion, which gave us various means of developing a relationship with the divine, mainly prayer and meditation. Love is a divine power, or God. Having a sense that we are loved gives us the ability to love ourselves, enough to take responsibility. We are also given a sense that as spiritual beings, as soul, we are all equal in the sight of God. No one is either better or worse than us. This doctrine strips us of undue vanity and at the same time gives us complete dignity. In ages past, shaman, prophets, or clergy were delegated as intermediaries between the divine power and man. A relationship with the divine was a step or two removed from the individual. Few of us had time for it as it was. We tended to be too distracted by just trying to survive the miseries of our daily life. However, a huge spiritual shift started to occur around 500 years ago. When the printing press made the Bible widely available, the early Mennonites were some of the first people to realize that every man ought to be his own priest. They made it their practice to develop a personal relationship with the divine power through prayer and meditation on the scriptures. Not only that, they developed an ethical, self-reliant way of life to ensure that this spiritual practice could be maintained. Although I happen to be of Mennonite stock, I'm not promoting their way of life, just using them as an example. Prayer has tended to be a monologue where we do all the talking. God is supposed to just sit there and listen while we recite an endless list of things we think he ought to do. This amounts to little more than bossing God around. Those who profess to believe he is all-wise, all-knowing, all-seeing, and all-powerful often have little faith that he knows better than we do. Bossiness is a very passive habit. It's important to understand that the divine power won't do anything for us that we refuse to do for ourselves. God is not a welfare state. We tend to forget that whatever situation we're in is exactly what we need in order to become the master of any situation. Meditation is the practice of stilling or emptying the mind in order to rid it of negativity and find inner peace. A quiet mind is desirable, but too much of this practice tends to lock us into a passive state. The active form is known as contemplation, a means of both freeing our imagination and becoming free of our minds. The mind is a good servant, but it makes a terrible master. Someone imprisoned in his mind can never see outside the box. He tends to be quite unable to see or admit the possibility of a spiritual side to life, quite apart from mental or physical reality. Instead of talking God's ear off, why not listen instead? We might then actually see, hear, and learn a thing or two. The divine power speaks to us all the time, but not in human language. The light and sound of God are its primary means of communication. They are the manifestations of the Ek, or the Holy Spirit, and can be seen and heard. To see and hear the light and sound, I'd like to offer something which might be considered beyond prayer or meditation. It's known as the Hue song. You sing it with a deep breath, like this. Hue. When sung with love, it can bring you into direct contact with divine love, or God. If you see an inner light in your third eye, the area behind and between your eyes, it is God's presence within you, lighting the pitfalls along your way. If you hear an inner sound during the silent periods of this song, or after you fall silent, it's the song of God. It's calling you home to itself, and it can take you home. Just listen and go with it. In this way, we can learn to love ourselves as spiritual creations of the divine power, as soul. We can then learn to see ourselves the way God sees us, as its children, who are learning to become godlike as itself. Notice I tend to speak of God not as a person, but as a presence that is far beyond the mental and physical realms of ego, gender, or personality. As soul, we too are not our minds or bodies. They are just temporary shelters we inhabit during our sojourn of education on earth. When we learn to love ourselves, we become ethical with ourselves, giving ourselves the freedom to be, and making good on our promises to ourselves. Then we can't help but be ethical with all of God's creatures. Everyone benefits when we observe these two laws. Do all you have agreed to do, and do not encroach on other persons or their property. Thank you for watching.